If you're out there watching this video wondering why should I listen to this guy, I guess the reason that I would give is that Interdependent Pictures is going to produce at least one feature film and at least one preview, and I don't know what that is. That could be yours. You could be an actor in that. You could be the person who wrote the screenplay that we have yet to read. You could be an executive producer, the director, anybody who would like to be involved in the making of a film from the very beginning in any way, shape, or form. If that's you, then you may want to listen to what I'm about to say. I'm here in Cannes basically to meet up with my poker buddies from Paris, and we're going to meet at my buddy Peter's house in Nice.
Hi, my name is Patrick Rignall. I used to be a corporate lawyer in France and in England.
I'm John Clements. I'm a venture investor and have known Chris since we met at a poker game quite some time ago. And he's a good friend.
Oh, hi, my name is Michael Fabian, and I've known Chris for quite some time now, about 10 years, 12 years, and thrilled to be part of all of this.
My name is Octavio Marenzi. I'm a management consultant in financial services and capital markets in particular. Very much looking forward to this. I'm based in Vienna, Austria now, though I lived in the US for a long time and in France, and I know Chris from France.
And I'm Peter Gumbel. I'm a writer, and this is my house.
Chris, I would like to sort of talk about sort of the basics, because I'm afraid that I personally don't have a good understanding of the existing studio system that exists within Hollywood for film production. But I understand that you think there's certain deficits and shortcomings in it that could be addressed more effectively with new technology and new operating models and new business models. And so I'd like to understand that, sort of the existing role of the existing studios and where you think are deficits there that should be addressed and could be addressed, and why.
Ready? Yeah. The system really is designed to keep people who aren't born into it out. It's crazy to think about it, but that's true, and that's the unfortunate side of this business, is that when you're the handsome, talented, funny guy in Iowa, and you think, I'm gonna move to LA and I'm gonna make it big, and it's like the odds are so stacked against you because you don't know the people, and a lot of it is who you know. So I think I don't know what the solution would be, but there is a problem.
Something that's important too is like there's a lot of talent out there, right? There's a lot of really good talent, but because the spaces at the top are occupied, some of the lower tiered talent doesn't get a chance to shine, doesn't get their time to kind of prove their worth to it. So if there's a way for those people, an avenue, and it sounds like there would be some of that opportunity here, I think that would be maybe initially some of the starting points for this is some of the people just wanting to get their name out there, prove themselves.
Prove them up. I was going to suggest I could almost see this going, ideally you get 1 or 2 or 3 projects made all the way through and in the early stages, and you're going to learn a ton of things through that process and about what worked. Why was this one so successful? And then why did that one fail? Even though they both were
Great
people
scripts.
voted, there was an executive producer board set up, we had great directors, it was a really good story, but one worked, one didn't. And it's the sort of thing you're going to want to teach people. It's going to be really educational and helpful, I think, when you're selling the membership.
I think there's a couple routes that it'll go, and Patrick was the first one to say, why don't you just get one great film and take it all the way through, and that was, so there's that, and I've identified a couple of those. That's one possible avenue of, I get this funding, everybody supports the thing, and you're saying you're going to give me X number of dollars, pay the 10% of X number of dollars for whatever movies come through, and then I'll be able to decide, okay, what based on how much I get, and I do this whole series of festivals, and I get X number of dollars, and I say, okay, now what are we exactly going to do to start here? And there's a couple of paths. I think the first one is pick 1 or 2 movies, or maybe just one, and take it through the whole process and learn a bunch and see how it plays out. Okay.
You could present the initial members with, I don't know what but let's just say it was 20 scripts, for example, whatever it is.
20 and say, here's 20.
Well, maybe it's a smaller number, but I think it's not a bad idea to go through the first scripts, then come up with actual projects that are people say thumbs up and they sign on to. Just go through that whole, and then maybe you get 10 trailers made. Or 10 trailer projects started. They don't all necessarily get made. So you do get a chance to have the dynamics play through.
But that's what I've been collecting here too.
And then eventually, out of all this, maybe one movie gets made. But have everything that's in the business plan go through step by step.
Can I just come to one point, which is the point you made a minute ago assumed the success of a film has some sort of scientific basis to it. Like it's not data science. And let's face it, if it was like data science, then every movie that was made by a major studio would be a runaway success. And to me, the most fundamental question around all of this about movies is, it isn't scientific. So there is always a high element of risk. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying we can't. Maybe you learn some things, but the big movie studios still make big mistakes as well as great movies or successful movies.
I'm just wondering if a movie gets made. That's all. I think that's success right now. Do you even get it made? Not the box office. How does it make it through this process, and then what was the experience?
Hello, I'm Chris Amel and welcome to Interdependent. Today I would like to take you through Interdependent's production journey. This channel will produce at least one feature and at least one preview, which you'll come to find out what that is. And the process or the journey begins with the call to adventure. For me, that was at the Cannes Film Festival, which I've shared a lot on this channel already. And for the production, for the first production 0000 or production 0, that begins with me asking you to participate in helping build a community around Interdependent and around this channel. I can guarantee at least the production of a single feature and preview through this system. I would like it not to be a contest. The submissions that I've received, I would like to be able to make more than one feature for Studio Zero. That will depend on whether or not I can build enough of an audience and a community for the channel. This is not meant to be a contest, meaning everyone competing to be that one picture that we get to make. You'll see that there are certain criteria that you need to make certain criteria you need to meet, and if you meet those criteria, we will include you in Studio Zero for production. And so this introduction and this short video will hopefully give you at least an overview as to what those criteria are and whether or not you meet them or would like to have your movie or your screenplay made through Interdependent Pictures will depend a lot on building this channel and getting the support of other people. So hopefully you'll participate in that. That for me is the call to adventure for you in Interdependent Pictures and Production Zero.
You're pulling down the barriers to enable people to participate who ordinarily don't have that chance.
So that's the democratization.
Okay, so that's the first part of it.
But I want to throw this one in there from what he made. Was I forgot that we talked about this previously but not on camera, was sort of the systemic reason for why original pictures don't get made now. And I think that the way we handle risk, the way we spread risk and reward allows us to be able to take big bets on original content that don't have to be a sequel, that don't have to be based on a book, that don't have to have pre-awareness behind them. I talk about Francis Ford Coppola and Megalopolis and him not being able to get that funded even though he's a 6-time Academy Award winner. That people aren't able to take big bets on originals. And when I read articles about that, they say maybe if Megalopolis is made by Francis Ford Coppola himself, leveraging his vineyard or whatever he needs to do, and if it's successful, maybe that will start a revolution or bring back the idea of making original pictures. And if it fails, we don't know, but if this is sort of to help that, to take bets on whether it's first-time filmmakers or experienced filmmakers to be able to make passion projects and original projects that can't get made in the current system, but that are specifically, this is specifically designed to be able to enable.
To open the system up.
Spec Screenplay, or screenplay submissions. A spec screenplay assumes that we didn't hire writers, a producer didn't go out and hire writers with a WGA contract or otherwise to write a screenplay that he has or she or they have decided to make, but that someone with a passion for a story to tell, I hope, wrote that screenplay with a particular vision in mind, a story that they felt they needed to tell, and without anyone paying them or prompting them, except their own drive to maybe make it in the business or to tell a good story or to just put 90 pages down on paper, has decided to, on their own, speculatively, to speculate on the creation of a screenplay. So that is a spec screenplay, and Studio Zero will focus on the submission of spec screenplays.
So as a practical example, for example, I know someone in Sydney, you've met him too, Alex, who you had coffee with. So he's got his new script. If he's interested in joining all of this, what does he do with his script? So let's say he's got a script, he's got no trailer. He comes in, he submits it via the site. Where does it go to from there? Can you take us through the steps? If it's, you know, a guy's got a good screenplay, how does it move forward from that?
The reader threshold. So if you have written a spec screenplay, the first criteria that you need to meet is to have that screenplay recommended by 100 readers. And those readers will be a mix of professional readers or informed audience members. Anybody can become a reader. If you are a writer and you have supporters of your project, if you have people that are your friends or your coworkers or your manager or your agent or anyone who likes your work, if you'd like to include them as readers in our studio, they can't just be ringers for your work. They can recommend your work, but they will also need to contribute their time and energy finding and discovering and hopefully enjoying the process of reading and recommending or passing on content to help Interdependent Pictures get those required recommendations and sort our submissions in the mailroom to determine whether or not those screenplays will be then read by executive producers in the next stage. Okay, the first step is a group of readers.
Yeah.
You need X number of readers to thumb it up, to like it, to whatever.
Okay.
If you meet that threshold, and the amount of people that need to do that are based on the writer needs to set a budget. They need to set their max budget. So based on their max budget for that film, and so some writers do that, some writers don't do that at all.
Is that normally, that's normally a producer's job, isn't it?
Are they even qualified to?
So writers are, it is recommended to anybody who's a writer in Hollywood that they have an understanding of budget when they're writing their screenplays, that they don't just write whatever with no concept of whatever. That doesn't mean that everybody does that. But it's recommended that you have some sense of scale and budget when you're writing. We're going to ask that of writers. However, we have people that can do that for them so that we can say, okay, in conversation, set this number with them if they've not done that at all. Crossing the threshold. Crossing from the unsigned world into the signed world. It's worth noting that if you do submit a spec screenplay to Interdependent, at that point we do not take any money from you. We do not take any rights in your work at that point. We're just asking you, if you would, to allow us to read that screenplay, and if we can, to get enough people to recommend your work that it qualifies for advancement in production. At the point where we've identified that it does, if we've gotten 100 readers to recommend it, or if we've changed that number based on your feedback, if you think that number should be lower or higher, once we've identified a work that we really want to usher through that process into the next stage and cross that threshold, then we will submit or send to you a full copy of the deal to transfer those rights and that ownership from you to the production company established by Interdependent Pictures to produce that work. In this case, Interdependent Pictures Production 000 or Interdependent Pictures Production 0 or just Production 0. But that is a legal entity, an LLC series, that is established by the Series LLC of Interdependent for the production of your work as its principal purpose. So, once you've crossed that threshold into the signed world, that next step is for that screenplay to be read by executive producers.
So there's a limitless number of executive producers.
Unlimited number.
Yeah.
So that was the whole thing I wrote on the top of this thing. Was I
Basically, they're investors. They're people who are willing to put some money in.
A member-managed, unlimited member Delaware Series Limited Liability Company taxable as a partnership. So any number of people could become executive producers.
So Alex has submitted a script. It's got the thumbs up from the group of people. He has come in with a budget. It's been looked at, and maybe 10%'s added to it, 20%, whatever. So now you've got the budget roughly worked out. From there?
So the readers read it, and then that's sort of the first, we're editing it, they're editing it, and then it gets passed on to executive producers. Okay. And executive producers are also reading it.
So you sign on then for picture by picture or project by project submission?
So you're a member of Interdependent, so you're just a member, and then you become associated on a project by project basis with a screenplay that you read.
So I'm only an executive producer of projects that I for whatever reason I'm interested. Yeah.
You're making the active decision. They can ultimately get the opinion of readers as well to see what these readers have commented and provided, and these readers can maybe influence executive producers' decisions, but ideally an executive producer reads it themselves and they decide how much capital they'd be willing to contribute to making it. Okay. So the first threshold is readers, the second threshold is executive producers, and that gives that writer an understanding of, hey, this is who it was read by, these people, if all goes well, are willing to commit this much capital to my movie. And if it exceeds the budget of what they've set, next step. Entering the signed world. Once you have gotten past the reader threshold guardians, once you have gotten a certain number of readers to recommend your work, you will have signed the deal. You'll have transferred those rights in your screenplay to the production company entity established to create a feature based on your screenplay, given those rights over to the production company, and entered the signed world by signing the deal.
Sorry, just back to the example of Alex. We've got to the step, you have executive producers, you've got enough money to make a trailer. What happens then?
You roll instantly into production.
And who do you go? How do you attract those people? Where do you go to do that?
Which people? The casting,
well,
the crew.
Cast or a director or
cast, producer, or maybe it's outside.
So the first
cameras,
person, the first
key grip.
All those people. So the community is open. When I said there's 27 roles, all of those people are members, and they're also reading screenplays. But I say you either contribute your time or your money. So if you're an executive producer, you're contributing your money. If I'm an actor, if I'm a grip, if I'm a gaffer, if I'm a production designer, I'm still reading screenplays and deciding, do I want to be part of that project in the mailroom? Swipe left, swipe right.
Okay, but just to be clear though, so you've got, the key roles I understand in films are producers and directors. So if we've given, but the point is, to what extent do they have control over, let's say you've got 4 cameramen who say, hey, I love this project, I'd like to be the cameraman. Who decides which of the 4 becomes the cameraman for the project?
So there's a thing on membership, and what you're talking about is granting membership rights to the production, and that's where it would sort of be like, I will, if I could pull this out, that would be great. But and I'll say it while I'm looking for it. But basically, it's the admission of the director of a production. The right to fulfill the role of director shall be granted by the initial sole associated member of a production, which is this person who contributed the screenplay property. So the person who contributed the screenplay property, if it's an orphan screenplay and they don't want to direct it themselves, they'll be responsible for choosing who that director is. Okay. So they get to make that.
They own this.
They're the initial sole associated member, but
they're the champion of this and making sure it keeps going.
And oftentimes they'd like to be the director because it's their baby.
Oftentimes they would, and oftentimes you might want them to be and you might not want them to be, but they have the unconditional right to select to be that, And if they can choose to be their own director, we may or may not, or executive producers may or may not green light that, because they'd be like, well, I love your story, but I'm not going to, you're not going to
There's a
direct
real
it.
dynamic there, team dynamic, that if they're not playing well and they're not compromising and trying to work with the director or the executive producers, or it'll fail.
But it's the same thing you were talking about with VC world. If the CEO is coachable or not coachable, and you know, it's exactly like that. So there's also the route, and you have people who don't want to change anything because they totally believe in what they're doing, and there's an opportunity not to bypass the entire executive producer route and just get funded from crowdfunding, from Catalyst, who give money without any expectation of equity just to support that project. They don't have to please any executive producer. Executive producer contributions. Once you've crossed that threshold from the unsigned into the signed world, your screenplay will now be read by executive producers. An executive producer can be anyone. It seems as if the minimum amount now is going to be set at $1,000. So anybody with $1,000 to contribute that would like to receive equity in turn for that contribution. Again, screenplay writers, submit your screenplays. You don't have to pay to be read. There's nothing that we're going to take in terms of rights in your work at that point. Submit your screenplays and allow us the opportunity to try to find an audience and help us, if you can, build that audience for your work, to have it read by executive producers who will be reading with an eye towards contributing money and taking equity in that project according to our deal. And that's very much we're going to go very in depth on what that deal is in another video in terms of what equity they get in exchange for their contribution. But Interdependent also will take an equity percentage of completed films that are released and that do find a paying audience, whether that be theatrically, whether that be a sale to Netflix or a Hulu or another streaming platform, whether that's on our own streaming platform or other ancillary or other revenue streams that we can find for completed features. This is a major studio in the sense that we are financing, developing, producing, distributing, and marketing, and also exhibiting on our own platform this content. And our aim is not to charge you a fee to enter this service or enter the studio to become a member. It is to align our interests with that of screenplay writers, of filmmakers, of actors, of producers, of everyone involved with a production, who hopes that while they will showing their art, they will also show their work for profit.
I want to back you up for a second, because there's an issue of the content development part. I understand the kind of the aspiration to allow the creativity to come through, which is one of the issues in the classic studios, where you have like a developmental hell, and you want to avoid that. However, you as the writer are going to submit something, but what's the advantage of the studio system is you do have then people who are looking at these things and saying, kind of, let's adjust the script, let's fine tune this character is perhaps wrong, let's make this historical rather than futuristic. So there's a whole kind of developmental part, which in this model that you're outlining, unless I've missed something, is missing. So who is going to be there trying to fine tune the script to make it? Is this this is the participation of these executive producers to say, hey, this character sucks, why don't you make him a woman, or whatever it is? But where is that? How do you deal with that?
So to narrow it down to say what we're looking for the first studio, it is narrow. So we're looking at only receiving spec screenplays for live action feature films, which is, we're not doing animation, we're not doing documentaries, and we're not doing series. But within that category of completed spec screenplay, so we're not hiring writers from scratch as a producer, which is a thing. I have plenty of producers who have an idea, but they want a writer, so we're gonna have them hire writers, and they sort of lead the production. But we're doing it this particular singular way. And they need to come in with as close to completion as possible with their spec screenplay, and there's two possible revision stages. So there's two places in which they can receive feedback from those readers, and they can receive feedback from those executive producers. And they can come back with a revision of those screenplays and still have time to move along that process. So there is a feedback mechanism from this community that could allow them to change it and alter it and provide.
But it's a take it or leave. It's a take it or leave it. It's not you need to change it, otherwise we're not going to make it.
No, and I don't want that. I don't want executive producers to be dictating. Ideally, it should be a visionary, like an auteur method of somebody who has a real vision for something, and ideally is also open and coachable, saying, okay, well, I'm getting honest feedback. You can take it or leave it. Thank you for all the feedback. I'm not going to do that.
Just one question. So, I mean...
Or maybe they do.
Because I totally get Peter's point. It sounds a bit like somebody submitting a manuscript and getting their book published without an editor.
No, but an editor is going to review it.
No. But my question is, so within your 27 roles, do you have what I would call in the book world an editor role? Or apart from the executive, because frankly, the executive producers may not be actually technically apt to make appropriate comments.
You're asking whether they're professionals or whether they're
no. But for me, like when you, as I understand, I've known Peter's the man who's been involved in the book process, but you have a single point of contact who is your interlocuteur, who's giving you feedback. But once it becomes consensual, I'm trying to understand. Imagine that executive producer A says he should be a woman, and executive B says he should be a dog.
You're getting a whole bunch of different voices.
You're getting all these.
How do
I, as the writer, reconcile this diversity of comments? I need a single channel.
The writer has the ability to basically say, well, to make the final decision, right?
Right. Which is
and if the executive producers don't like it, they can just pull out and say, well, enough of this. I mean, there'll be some, I'm sure, dynamic.
But right now, it's just, you'll have a lot of people telling you, but you get that anyway. You get a lot of people telling you a bunch of different stuff, and you have to either have a vision and do it, and maybe what he said struck me, and so I take that, and what he said didn't, so screw him.
A good example, which is not a screenplay, but it's a novel. A friend of mine has just finished a novel, and it's going to be published. Got a publisher, but her original version had it set in 1940 in Italy, and then spinning forward to 2050, and they read it and they said take out all the futuristic stuff, set it all in 1940. So she rewrote it, took out the futuristic stuff, and it works really well, and they're going to publish it like that. So in your world, is there going to be somebody who's going to say this is going to be a much better story if you kind of focus it more narrowly on this?
I guess in practical terms, I think what will probably happen is that there will be executive producers who are experienced executive producers that in these Q&A sessions and in these feedback sessions that maybe will take the lead in terms of they might be more respected by a writer, so they're going to hear that feedback and take that more to heart than the executive producer who gave $1,000 who's never has any IMDb credits or whatever. So there might be some of that.
But it's going to be different from the usual studio approach where you're just told if it's going to get made at all, you've got to change it.
Just a question, because I mean you've given an awful lot of power to the screenwriter, which I can see from a creative point of view for a screenwriter is very attractive, but aren't you actually potentially losing interesting projects because Peter's come up with very valid points, and I consider that anything that touches my script is endangering my culture, my artistic integrity. So basically I say I'm not doing the film, and suddenly a film that actually with a tweak could have been a brilliant film just cannot get made.
I mean, I think the better the right person that comes into our system. I mean, Joe Mo is a great example. Like, I mean, and the idea of the CEOs that are coachable. It's like if you're just coming in there saying, "I'm only going to do it my way or the highway," and then they leave or whatever.
I mean, it's doomed to fail.
Yeah, come on, they were going to be that guy, or maybe they make a brilliant film and it gets made, but like, and they're like, "Wow, I'm so glad that, he stuck to his guns or whatever." But I think there's an openness that you need to have to make something good and commercially viable. That I think you need to be able to remain. I like this. I'm not going to put tits and ass on page 37 because you guys all want it. But like,
It's a bad experience. No, so this one, the writer sort of goes through the first time.
Put them on page one.
Yeah.
And they won't change anything. They probably will have a lot of trouble the second time attracting in.
Unless they make an amazing film that does bazillions at the box office, and then people just won't question it. But yeah.
So can I go back to Alex? So this guy Alex, who you met, he's got the funding. The executive producers agree on the funding. So he's got the money. What happens next? Because Patrick asked for the trailer. So Patrick asked earlier on.
Does he have the casting?
Wait. So Patrick asked earlier on. Look, you might need 3 cameramen, and you've got 12 available. Who selects them? Is it the director?
Oh, we started going through that. So we only got to the first part of it, which was that the writer has the ability to grant the director the rights. Choose the director. But then the director, then he has no control at that point. So the director then becomes the champion of the project, and they have the right to hire the directors of. So director of cinematography, which I'm calling it, which is really the cinematographer, the DP, but calling it the director of cinematography, the director of sceneography. So it's a different name, which is basically amounts to a number of different departments like costuming, production design, and so on, which I've given the name of director of sceneography, and then there's scenographers, whether they're whatever, like a landscaper, greenskeeper, whatever. Then there's like the director of audiography, which is like a kind of a Bollywood thing. There aren't audiographers really in American system, but I like that. So there's a head of audio, a director of audiographer.
Can I just interrupt briefly, which is like, so, you choose the director, the writers come along, he's choosing Mr. X or Mrs. X as the director. Are there any minimum criteria as to avoid the director appointing somebody who's got no experience in scenography or no experience becoming the director of?
Absolutely not.
No, like, you take your faith is in the director, basically.
Yes, the answer to your question is he can choose whoever the hell he wants. And then you have to decide, did he do good or not, did he do bad, and put it together as team.
So if you say, pick my wife, she takes nice pictures.
It's not in his interest. No. Because then the thing won't advance.
You never quite know.
You never quite know.
But that's the whole thing, is these interests. I've tried to create an incentive structure that results in a certain thing through a number of different details. That plays into it, certainly. Who do you pick as your team? And when we're judging that, like, not only who did you pick as your team, but did they choose to take equity? Did they choose to take a payment? Like, what's everyone's level of involvement? Who are they? Why are they motivated to do this? Like, what's their experience? But also hearing them out, hopefully, and saying, well, let me hear your vision for you may have never done it before, but give you the opportunity to say, but I have this really great vision for what I think would be,
The fact that you get a team together basically on a project, I guess, is saying a lot already. Then a script basically has met with some success.
Now, the director will attach a certain number of people to the project in order to create a schedule and a budget. So the process, what you'd make a decision on is the schedule, the budget, the cast for the preview, the certain directors of and the director. From there, the director hangout occurs. And the director hangout is the point at which the executive producers actually contribute the amount up to the option that they have to contribute. There's a point at which people have to decide and look at those things you're asking to look at, which is, do I like this dynamic? Do I like this director? Do I like this?
I mean, this is before
and you don't have to contribute. This is before the trailer's even made. So after reading the screenplay, reviewing the schedule, reviewing the budget, sitting down with the director at the director hangout and talking to hear the vision the director has for the production, their tone, the cast and crew and the people that they've assembled in order to execute that vision. Directors will tell their story and the story and the vision that they have and paint a picture for the production that they hope to tell. They will also, during that period leading up to the director hangout, be able to, with confidence and with a certain amount of credibility, talk to people when they're actually getting them to be attached to the project to say, hey, I've got this many people who've read and recommended it. I'm working with Interdependent Pictures. They have this new process. Please check it out, hopefully, and subscribe to the channel or whatever. Look at the videos. And say, hey, I've got a certain number of people who've committed to making this if I can execute these steps. So I do have the money.
Yeah, so what happens to the I'm just trying to understand what happens to the shortfall in the financing when you have people who don't exercise their options. Is that when the project falls flat?
Well, that's one of those thresholds. As long as those commitments have come in over the budget that's been set, over the threshold that you've set in order to the amount of money that you need to raise for that production, then you can go out into the market and go out to your friends and through the channel communicate with people who can be attached to your production, knowing that it's not just an idea, that there are people and a process and a studio standing behind the making of that.